So I have Chris Shelton here. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well, actually. I have had you on my channel a few times. You are my go-to Scientology expert, I would say, because you were in the religion for a while, right?
27 years, just a little while. I thought I'd check it out.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So we
Yeah.
have some questions here. The most Googled questions about Scientology. So let's just jump right into it and
Excellent.
see if we can get some answers to these. The first question I have is, what does Scientology believe?
Okay, so we've got a few questions here, so I'm going to give summary answers. And if you're looking for, expansion of that, I've got over 700 videos on my channel that really elaborates on this stuff. Cool. So Scientologists believe that you as a human being are actually not your body. You are, the essence of you is an immortal spiritual entity called a thetan, from the Greek letter theta with an N to make it a noun. So you are a thetan. You have a body. You have had trillions, millions of bodies in your past lives, because as an immortal spiritual entity, when your body dies, you do not die. Scientologists also believe that because of that, you have an accumulated stress and trauma factor that basically weighs you down to the point that you actually don't even realize you're a spiritual entity anymore. You're convinced you're a body. You're convinced the physical universe is all there is to life. And they believe that Scientology, through the techniques L. Ron Hubbard worked out, they believe that they will undo all of that accumulated stress and trauma, and that they will be able to undo it all in just one lifetime and free themselves from literally trillions of years of, Hubbard said that thetans have been around in the physical universe here for 4 quadrillion years. So there's a lot of stress.
That is extremely fascinating. So what do they worship? Like, do they have like a god or anything like that?
They do not. Scientologists do not engage in worship of any kind. Scientology is about rehabilitating you to a godlike state. So there isn't another entity to worship, and you don't really, I wouldn't even go so far as even to jokingly say it's a self-worship, although I will say that it does have a tendency to imbue narcissism into a degree, to move people on. If you were going to call narcissism a spectrum, it would definitely push people on that spectrum towards a self-centeredness, which is kind of funny. But there's no worship.
Because they know just everything about the universe, and you know nothing about it, basically, right?
Right, exactly. The accumulated knowledge and spiritual awareness they feel that they have gained, and the fact that they are a cult, and so they pump themselves up on their own Kool-Aid, so to speak, right? They really get very haughty and arrogant and condescending about their knowledge and skill and spirituality and all that.
So what do they preach? Like, I understand they try to talk to, they try to get a lot of celebrities into their group, basically. And I heard that they send celebrities or up-and-comers pamphlets and things like that to try to bring them into the religion, quote unquote. What do they preach about?
Well, the preaching in Scientology is about how Scientology contains a tool set that you can use to improve your life. That's the idea that they're trying to sell to you, is that it's not, the religion angle is not a big deal these days. It used to be a bigger deal. They're all about practical application. Scientology is an applied religious philosophy. So it's applied, you use it in life, right? It's supposed to make things work better for you. And it's religious because it deals with you as a spiritual entity. That's the only reason it's religious. That's what they tell you, right? So that's the preaching that goes on, is really trying to convince you that it's that they're really trying to negate or make negligible the religious aspect of it. And what they're really trying to pump up to you is that it's a toolkit for life. and for your life specifically.
So when you go to, I guess they have like a Sunday service type of thing, don't they? What do they talk about there?
Yeah, the Sunday service is a little weird in Scientology, but they do have it if you show up for it or if they have enough people there. It goes in and out because they don't like doing services and stuff because they're not, Scientology, I guess I should say before we go on, this is all a scam, okay? This is a money-making operation. So all this religious stuff is really religious cloaking. And so the Sunday services, sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. When they are, they're not. They read from L. Ron Hubbard's works. They then do what's called a group processing session where they give you a period of time where they give you commands to look at the ceiling, look at the floor, look around, think about this, look at that. Very, real world kind of stuff to try to get you out of your head a little bit and orient you to the space that you're in. And it generally wakes people up and makes them feel a little bit more aware of their environment, right? So they feel helped by it. And that's what the Sunday services consist of.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what do they believe about God? Because I've heard that they kind of have this tagline where you can be a Christian and believe in God and also be a Scientologist, right? Like, what are their beliefs around that?
Yeah, the idea with God is that it's not really addressed in Scientology. Hubbard only talked about God or a creator or the prime mover unmoved a few times. He was very, very down on organized religion, and he was specifically down on Catholicism and Christianity, much more so than any other religion he ever brought up or mentioned. And of course, he was talking in 1950s United States. So there wasn't going to be a need to talk about Islam to that particular demographic at that time. He did talk about Hinduism. He did talk about Buddhism as precursors and forerunners of Scientology and inspirations for Scientology. But God is pretty much left out of Scientology, which is why you can come into Scientology with your own God belief. What Scientology's real goal, and then we talked about this, I mean, this was not a subtle thing amongst membership of an advanced level. We talked about how we were basically going to beat that belief out of people, Christianity and stuff, and not physically, really violently, but through the auditing, through the training, through the education, through discouraging comments and the like. But, I knew one woman who was a Sunday school teacher and maintained her beliefs and maintained going and teaching Sunday school all the way up until she got to the level of clear. And then she told me about how Hubbard had installed all these doubts and reservations about Christianity into her head and got her thinking about it and had sort of deconverted her in the process of moving her up the Scientology levels. That's the goal that they're pushing for. So they'll say you can be this or that or the other thing, but by the time you get to a certain level, if you're still going to Sunday services and worshiping God, people are going to be a little bit, really, what's up with that guy? Because you should have realized by then that that's all a fiction and that you are a thetan and that this universe was created by you, not by, Christ's dad.
That is extremely fascinating. Just the whole mindset behind it and the fact that they're kind of trying to like push anything else out and in a lot of ways like dominate your mind, dominate your headspace to try to just fill it with Scientology and Scientology alone. So on that note, what do they believe about the afterlife? Do they have any kind of special beliefs about the afterlife, or is it?
Not really. See, we are thetans who are trapped in the physical universe. We can't get out. We're stuck here. So it's not a matter of flitting off to some other spiritual realm or other dimension or something. I think Hubbard kind of poo-pooed multiple dimensions. I don't even remember him even mentioning it, but somebody told me that. But as far as the afterlife, well, there really is no afterlife because you never die. You're always alive, right? So really, the time span of a body is really, Hubbard compares it to having a splinter in your thumb. It's like, that's your body, it's like, and so when the body dies, you have this whole process you kind of go through of having to go, being compelled to go find another body. So you end up down at the hospital picking up a newborn, right? Or, some pregnant lady's there and you go in there, and he calls it the the assumption, I think is what it's called, from back in 1952. And you take over that baby's body, right? And if there's another Thetan there, maybe you guys duke it out a little bit, right? For possession of the body. He talks about that. And that's your goal between lives. And sometimes between lives, you will be re-implanted with these compulsions and these obsessions to have a body, need a body, you are a body. These implants come from implant stations that are just robotically running here on Earth, like up in the Pyrenees Mountains, on Mars.
Who built them?
Invader forces, various invader forces in the past. There's a whole cosmology, and it would literally take me hours to break it all down. It's very random. It's very strange. It's very Star Warsian in some ways. There's a lot to it. I'm just gliding right over it, just ignoring that you don't know anything about what I'm talking about, right? But there's a lot to all this crap, and the whole Xenu thing kind of feeds into this, but that's only the smallest part of this whole thing.
Right. That explains why you're such a huge Star Wars fan, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I got my X-wings, and that's right. That's right.
So the next question we have on the list here is what does Scientology say about leah remini? Now, I've talked about fair gaming on my channel before. What is that?
Yeah.
And I understand they've been trying to fair game leah remini, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Fair gaming is when they basically put a target on your back and say, all Scientologists can shoot at that person, and we're not going to do anything about it. We're not going to hold you accountable if you, say, hurt her or kill her or anything like that, right? It taken to an extreme sense. But, there are questionable deaths in Scientology's past, and I'm not going to be an apologist for them and say, well, they never really hurt anybody, because I know for a fact they did.
There are documents of them framing people and stuff, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. They have framed people for hit and run, for bomb threats. They have set up Paulette Cooper for that. And like I said, there are questionable and wrongful deaths in Scientology's past. So when you expose this stuff, they get a little pissed at you, and so they disconnect you. You are called a suppressive person. I'm a suppressive person. Leah Remini is a suppressive person. And we are people who speak out publicly against Scientology, try to warn people off of it, right? Let them know what's really going on. And so what they say about her is similar to what they say about me, that we're just in it for the money, and I'm like, really? I am? I'm in it for the money? Still waiting for that check from Big Pharma, And they say that she's, they deride her and they insult her and they degrade her, and they do so in an effort to try to win the public sympathy. But the funny and bizarre and continually weird thing about Scientology is they keep doing this despite the fact that it does not engender any public sympathy, just the opposite, because it's so obvious that they are being the bully and they are acting like a third grader. And that is the mentality of their fair gaming, is I have a hate website against me. She's got a whole fleet of pages. My hate website is actually a page on her hate website because I was on her show. So they include my stuff in the whole website they put together to debunk all of her guests, all of her statements, everything. And they never address any of her actual statements. They just insult and deride her. They never actually take on and challenge the claims that we made. And that's par for the course for destructive cults. They can't engage at the truth level, so they have to engage at the insult level.
It's like a troll army then, kind of.
Oh, yeah. Very much so. And they'll hire private investigators and lawyers to just go after people, because they used to do it themselves. And then Scientologists actually went to jail, got in trouble for that in a really big way. And so they learned their lesson, and so they started outsourcing the dirty work. And that's what they do now.
So how does Scientology work? You were inside of the religion, and you were reasonably high up, right? Like, you were part of the Sea Org and everything, and the Sea Org is like, why don't you tell me a little bit about it? Like, how does it work?
Yeah. Okay. So there are 3 levels of responsibility or hierarchy in Scientology, which is public. You pay for services, you do your courses, you have a house, you have a job, you have a family, you're just a regular person. staff for the city level churches, which is a contractual obligation of 2.5 or 5 years. You're also kind of public. You live out in the real world. You got another job, or your spouse supports you. You get paid a stipend, a very tiny stipend, or if anything at all, while working for the church. They're not obligated to pay you. There's no such thing as minimum wage, because you're a religious volunteer. That's what you're contracted as. And then there's the Sea Org, the Sea Organization. And this is a paramilitary 24/7 outfit, ranks, ratings, uniforms, yes, sir, no, sir, how high, sir. And that's what I did for 17 years, is I did that. I was a staff member for 8 years, and then a Sea Org member for 17 years.
And they sign contracts to be in the Sea Org, yeah. Right?
The Sea Org is the billion-year contract. When you hear about the billion-year commitment, that's the Sea Org. And we all did it. And we all believed it because we really believed that we were Thetans. And what's a billion years compared to 4 quadrillion? What's a billion years of help and sacrifice and duty when you're salvaging the universe? Not just this planet, but the whole universe. It was a big job, and we thought a billion years would about do it. So...
Yeah, I guess you dropped out of your contract a little early then, huh?
I did. I kind of skipped out, yeah.
That's funny. So how does Scientology make money, like, as an organization? Like, where does all the money come from? Because they're, like, really wealthy, aren't they?
They are. They've got billions in reserves. They sell books. They sell L. Ron Hubbard lectures on CDs. They sell courses or classes. They sell, and they've got hundreds of classes to sell you, from $25, do-it-yourself help sort of little tiny mini class to, $10,000 full chronological study of Dianetics and Scientology courses, right? And everything in between. But most of the money comes in through, as far as service sales go, by far the most of the money comes in through auditing or counseling. That is their therapy. And that's a one-on-one process, about 98% of the time. And it's a counseling sort of service, and it's bunk. It's complete pseudoscience. So I won't get into the details of that. That's what they sell, and they sell it by the hour. Actually, what they sell it by is the 12.5-hour block, called an intensive, and you're supposed to receive that intensive within a 7-day period of time. Within a week, you're supposed to get that 12.5 hours delivered to you, and you can buy on a sliding scale multiple intensives. If you buy 10 intensives, it's going to be cheaper than if you buy one intensive 10 times.
What kind of numbers are we talking? So they have a sliding.
About 3,200 to 4,000 for one intensive.
Jeez.
Yeah. So, and sliding scale, they come down to maybe 3,000 per, 2,800 per. You can get sliding scales that go up pretty high. You can buy like 50 intensives at a shot, So that's how they sell the services. But I believe at this point, the biggest moneymaker for them is actually selling, literally, as my friend John Atack even wrote a whole book, called it, a piece of blue sky. Let me sell you a piece of blue sky, because they just sell you nothing. They get you to give them money because you believe, as a Scientologist, especially the rich Scientologists that they really work over for this, they get you to believe that their social betterment programs need funding, right? Or their renovation programs need funding because they're renovating all their buildings at great expense. So they need the money for this, and they just want you to give it to them because, we're the good guys. We're the ones saving the world. We're the ones who are making it all happen. And this we call straight donations. There's no exchange. And they have made millions and millions because they push hard for this. And the main way they push for this is through membership in the International Association of Scientologists. So I shouldn't say you don't get anything. You get a membership card.
Okay, well that's not nothing, I guess, right? It's
pretty
much
useless. And you get a title. And this is akin to the old titles in the Parisian royal court, the holder of the royal footstool, right? I mean, you could get some pretty well. These titles are your patron level as you move up the status levels. So you're a patron if you give them $5,000. You're a patron meritorious if you give them $15,000, and you're a patron. You're a silver patron if you give them $25,000, but you're a gold patron if you give them $35,000, and you're a platinum patron if you give them $50,000, right? You just
these
climb
numbers are
this
just
ladder,
absurd.
right?
Like I
Oh yeah.
I don't know that
Oh, yeah.
I've seen
And-
like those numbers in my entire like I've never held that much money in my hand before, and they're just
Yeah.
raking it in. That is crazy.
Yeah.
So how does Scientology recruit? I know we've talked about how they try to bring in celebrities and things like that, but how do they bring new people into the group?
The main way is through a warm, but what I call a warm reading rather than a total cold reading, which is through the personality testing. They get you to fill out a 200 question survey, yes, no, maybe type questions. Very odd questions. You end up with a graph of your personality. It looks very scientific. It's not. It's total pseudoscience. I did a whole video on it. But that graph gets you talking. It gets you sitting down across from an evaluator who's telling you about yourself, but mainly is soliciting for you to tell them about you, right? They want you coughing up. So the idea is to get you talking and you moving and figure out what your ruin is, the thing that is ruining your life, as far as you're concerned. Bad relationship with a spouse, bad work situation, can't communicate with anybody, you feel suppressed, you feel like there are people who are just working against you all the time. They've got classes for all this stuff. And the classes give you common sense principles to apply to those situations and a little bit of time and space from them, so you can kind of look at them a little bit more objectively with another person and go, oh, maybe this is what I should do. And you kind of sort some things out. I'm not saying people aren't helped with that, but that's how they recruit. It has to help you because that's the entry level. You're not going to stick if they don't do something for you.
Right. So it's kind of like they are offering some form of therapy to people, quote unquote, but it's not based in modern psychology. It's not based in science in any way. It's just this type of thing they've made up back in the 50s, I guess, right? And
Correct.
They've been pushing it basically this whole time.
That is exactly right. The basic theory of what their counseling is and how it works was all formulated at the beginning. And it's all based on hypnotism. That's what it comes back down to. That and very outdated and outmoded forms of psychotherapy from back in the day.
Okay.
That Freud knew didn't work. I mean, this isn't like
we've known for like a really long time. Yeah.
Exactly. Everybody who actually knows about this stuff. This is why Dianetics got panned by the American Psychological Association back in the day, right? Is because they looked at it and went, yeah, been here, done that. We know this doesn't work. Don't do this.
My next question on the list here is, why does Scientology use a cross as their symbol? And I am genuinely curious about this one. Do you know what's up with that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is part of the religious cloaking. In 1953, Hubbard incorporated the Church of Scientology in Camden, New Jersey, and couple other churches, and by 54 these were going concerns, and Hubbard wanted to present a religious image to the world because now Scientology, the Church of Scientology, was a thing. Prior to that, it had been all about Dianetics. So Scientology was this big foray into religion, and the idea was to get it quickly identified with religious icons and religious symbols that people would readily identify. Well, this all was going down, and Kansas moved to Phoenix, Arizona. So we're talking conservative America, 1950s. What's their symbology? Crosses. I mean, they're all over the place, right? Especially in the South. You can't drive 3 blocks in Texas without seeing crosses on people's lawns. So crosses are the thing. And Hubbard came up with an 8-pointed cross, which actually isn't something he came up with. He just yanked it from, as I understand it, the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis church or religious sort of occult group that Hubbard had a lot to do with and knew a lot about from his Crowley days when he
Gonna
was.
have to do some reading on that one.
Yeah, Hubbard was an Aleister Crowley kind of follower and a practicer. He practiced what's called black magic or sex magic with Jack Parsons, who was a JPL rocket scientist in Pasadena, California, literally 5 minutes away from where I grew up. I had to laugh when I learned where they were.
That is so crazy.
Yeah, where they were located, because I grew up in Pasadena, California, and I grew up 5 minutes away from where Hubbard was messing around with this dude, Jack Parsons, and they were doing sex magic and stuff.
That is extremely fascinating, man. Just the history behind all of this just absolutely blows my mind. Is Scientology polytheistic or monotheistic? We talked a little bit about this. Is that even a fair question to apply to Scientology, or?
I mean, in a very dim way, it would be mono if it was anything. There's definitely not a plurality of creators or supreme beings in Scientology. Hubbard only referred to a singular entity when he did refer to it. But what he said was that you really wouldn't understand what the supreme being is until you yourself rose through all the lower levels of Scientology and got to the top, and then that would present itself as this is what it is. So in a way, Hubbard was sort of implying that we really were in a position where we couldn't really even understand God, right? Until we followed all of his levels and got to the top of the Scientology
Don't even worry about
bridge.
it until you get to the top, and then we'll talk.
Exactly.
Basically. Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking to me about this. It's been really fascinating. One more time, where can people find you? You have a YouTube channel, right?
I do. It is my name, Chris Shelton, critical thinker at large. Look me up. It's just Chris Shelton. And you can find me at my blog, mncriticalthinking.com. That's where I post all my video content, and transcripts of my videos and stuff go there. And you can check out my book, Scientology A to Xenu, An Insider's Guide to What Scientology is Really All About, which is on Amazon.
Yeah, I'll put a link to that in the description too, and
awesome.
And all of the other stuff you mentioned. So give that a look. Again, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me, and I will talk to you again. Okay?
Cool, man.